Good morning to you all. Nice to see that you put your alarms on the right time. It's really, really nice to be here, and the reason is very simple. For the past 100 days, I just checked out my Track My Life application. I have traveled 100,000 kilometers. I got back home from Yekaterinburg on a trade promotion trip yesterday, and before that I had been in Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, 5 cities in China, then to Zambia, Tanzania, Colombia and Mexico, and now I'm going to be home for the summer. And by the way, this Track My Life application can be found on this brand new Nokia Lumia, which is, it's, I don't, if you guys have an iPhone, you're so 1990s, it's way past. It's really good stuff. Wait until you get the 41 megapixel thing. It's really good. It's really, really nice to be here today, and really nice to be here with our political family as well. And thanks to Tommy and the whole team for organizing it. I love being here as well, the sort of epitome of minimalist Scandinavian architecture. We have our homes like this quite often. I hope you had a good day yesterday, and I hope you had a good dinner last night. What I'm going to do is to set out in approximately 15 minutes what I would call a rather optimistic view of where we are going. Because my strong feeling is that if this euro crisis has been approximately, say, 100 steps, I would argue that we've taken about 60 to 70 of those steps. I'm not saying that we've done everything right, but we've done a lot in a very short amount of time. So I'm going to try to be the optimist in it all. And I think what we need to do is to move away from a pessimistic or a melancholic crisis mode. Ota Olli tuossa, voit olla tuossa mun paikalla vaan. Joo, mut siirrä toi pad, äläkä näytä kenellekään, että mulla on se. So move the pad and don't show that I have one as well. So we need to move away from the pessimistic, melancholic mode and crisis mode into a more optimistic growth mode. And I think the panelists that we have today are going to be great in the sense that, we need to move away, to be honest, from Olli, who's been managing this crisis in a fantastic way, towards Michel, who is trying to take care of the aftermath and get the growth going. And I will give you 3 basic suggestions on what we should do to get growth going again. The first one is structural change at home. We all need to do that, and we have all been doing it. I mean, look at the countries that were the hardest hit. Greece. People used to talk about Grexit. Now people are talking about Greekovery. And I think that's really good news. Look at Ireland. Structural changes they took on the banking sector and public sector to get things going. They are back on the market. Look at Portugal, the changes they did in their labor market. They are back on the market. Look at Spain and the way in which it dealt with the banking sector crisis. They never had to leave the market. Look at Cyprus, still floating very well. Look at countries such as Finland. We've had to take structural changes as well. Approximately 5 billion euros worth of tax cuts, tax increases and cuts on public spending. On top of that, we've reduced our corporate tax rate from 24.5% to 20%. We've just been told by the Commission to do better. 5 recommendations, one of which is to try to increase our pension age. We have to take these types of proposals seriously. But this is what we can do. These are the structural changes. But when I say that we do the structural changes, I also want to remind everyone that it is the enterprises, it is the companies that provide for the growth. We just create the elements. And may I also add, because we're here with the EPP family, remember that the biggest and toughest structural changes have been taken by EPP leaders. And it's a gutsy thing to do. It's not easy for anyone or any of us to do that. Second thing, in addition to structural changes that we need to do, is to focus on the internal market and the liberalization of the internal market. And here is where, of course, Michel comes in. And I always say this, Michel, tu es très libéral pour un Français. et tu as beaucoup de courage en plus, parce que c'est pas facile. Nous sommes dans une situation qui est très, très difficile, mais il faut continuer de pousser la libéralisation du marché intérieur. And I think Michel has done it great in the Single Market Act #1, Single Market Act #2, and all the other measures that he has taken on the financial services sector. We need to push for this. That's the only way in which we can get growth going. Remember that we would not have European welfare states in the way in which we do today if it was not for the free movement of goods, free movement of services, free movement of money, and free movement of people. That is the foundation of the European Union's economy. Yes, we're a political union, we're a value union, but we use economic instruments, and those instruments are liberal instruments, not protective instruments. The final and third point I wanted to make before I hand it over to the panel on how to get growth going is linked to free trade. So the first one, structural change, the second one, internal market, and the third one, free trade. And with free trade, of course, we have three ways of doing it. One is a multilateral agreement, WTO and Doha. I think we can unfortunately forget that. Second one is plurilateral agreements. In other words, take some pieces out of the WTO, focus on certain sectors. I think we can move on that. And the third one is bilateral trade agreements. And that's basically what the European Union and Karel de Gucht in many ways is doing right now. Look, if we were able to push through the free trade agreements that we have in the pipeline right now, the Commission, whom I believe, as always, has told us that it would grow or increase our GDP by approximately 2%. It would have a net value of 250 billion euros. That's 2 years of EU budgets. And on top of that, it would reduce our unemployment rate or create more employment. Now, there are a few very important trade agreements in the pipeline. EU-Canada is almost there. EU-India, we need to work on with all of its complications. EU-Japan, glad that we got the scoping exercise over and we can start. And most importantly, the EU and the US, which, by the way, we're not supposed to call a free trade agreement, right? It's a partnership and something agreement. Partnership, trade and investment agreement. That's probably because Americans don't like free trade too much. That's the issue there. And we need to push it through. I know that the free trade agreement, sorry to say it again, between the EU and the US is going to be sensitive. We all have our sensitivities, whether it's agriculture, whether it's audiovisual services. But it's very important that we take care of those sensitivities in a way in which all of us are happy and at the same time start the negotiations on a broad basis. We need to start it as broadly as possible. We cannot start with protectionist inclinations because we cannot get out of this crisis by protecting ourselves. We can get out of this crisis, I would argue, by opening up. And a final point I wanted to make about trade, because I work on both for portfolios, Europe and trade. When I started with this portfolio a couple of years ago, trade didn't seem too sexy, right? Everyone was focused on the crisis. What kind of legislation, 2-packs, 6-packs, fiscal compact, banking union, single resolution mechanism, how do we get out of this? But now suddenly trade becomes interesting again. It's about audiovisual affairs with the EU and the US, or it's about solar panels with China. There's something brewing there. Why is it interesting? Because this is the stuff that can give us real growth. And I think it's very important that we, as the EPP, and only as ALDE EPP, should be pushing for these three things: structural change at home, liberalization of the internal market, and especially the single digital market, which Jyrki talked about yesterday, and then finally free trade. If we go with these into the next elections, the European Parliament, if we go into the next mandate of the European Commission with these three theses, I think we'll do well in the elections, and I think we get the European economies growing again. So let's inject a little bit more optimism into the system, because we all need it. Thank you very much.